me know, and let's get started. So real quick, as we jump into this, one thing you'll notice on my screen is down the left-hand side of my screen, you'll see a Twitter feed. Everybody is welcome to participate in the social conversation. In the upper right-hand corner, you'll see the hashtag C5CRM. So if you would like to tweet anything, you don't need to tweet your questions. You can use the GoToWebinar interface for that. But if you hear something that you'd like to quote or just shout out to everybody, feel free to do that. And if you do have a question, you can feel free to tweet it if you'd like to. If we don't get to it in the session, then we will try to reply to any tweets that come in after the conclusion of the session. And if you want to direct any tweets at either myself or the company, you can see at C5Jeff and at C5Insight are the two hashtags for that. So enough introduction about me. I'd like to work with Allison here to get a quick introduction to the folks who are attending today. So Allison's going to pull up a first poll here and ask where you are with your CRM. If you can go ahead and pull that up. And you've got several options. If you'd let us know, are you considering getting a CRM solution for the first time? Do you have a CRM solution that maybe you're not fully satisfied with? You might be having some issues. Are you neutral? You feel like you've got something acceptable, maybe it could be better, but could probably also be worse? Or do you feel like, hey, we're happy overall, we're here maybe just to learn a little bit more and improve? So Allison, when it looks like we've had good participation in that, go ahead and pull up the results.
Sure. Right now we're showing a little over 70% voted, so we're going to give you guys just a few more seconds, and then we'll go ahead and wrap up this poll. Alrighty. Looks like we have got just about everybody in there, a couple more seconds, and we're going to go ahead and close this poll on where you currently are with your CRM. Currently showing 11% considering CRM, 16% unsatisfied, 32% neutral, and 42% satisfied. I'm going to close this poll now.
Okay, great. Thanks, Allison. So it sounds like about half the folks here are satisfied and maybe just looking for some other options, some more things to learn, and the other half are either considering CRM or maybe not as satisfied with theirs as they'd like to be, and they're looking for ways to improve. Great, thank you all so much for participating. It really helps me to shape what I'm going to say as we do these. So let's pull up another one and just understand what your job function is within your company. Just in general, this is very high level. Allison's going to pull this up now. And just let us know, are you more aligned primarily with IT? I know we all wear multiple hats, so try to choose the primary one. Are you more sales, customer service, marketing, or are you more aligned with the overall leadership of your organization, have responsibilities for a lot of different groups? So we'll allow a few more seconds for folks to continue to pull in on that one.
You guys are off and running with this one. Currently a little over 80% of you have voted, so we'll give you just a couple more seconds. And for the group that we've got here today, we've got about 60% of the attendees in IT, 30% in marketing, and about 10% in leadership.
Okay, that's great. Interesting to see. There's no sales or customer service presence here today. We usually see a pretty strong presence there. Always strong on the IT side. But one thing we are seeing, by the way, is that the marketing office, the office of the CMO, is more and more frequently in the leadership seat for CRM initiatives. Of course, leadership overall, C-level executives are often in that position too, and IT should be involved with every single project, not necessarily in leadership, but one of the deadly sins we see is when IT is not involved at all. So it's good to see we have a good presence with IT here as well. And let's bring up our final poll, and that is, which CRM solution are you using right now? So Allison will bring that up, and if you'll just let us know, the two most popular ones are the ones that we're asking about here, Salesforce and Dynamics CRM, but there are a number of other ones out there. In fact, there's dozens and dozens of CRM solutions out there, so if you're on one of the other ones, let us know about that. And if you're not using any CRM at all yet, let us know about that as well.
Alrighty, and we are close to 80% of the voting and a strong majority for Dynamics CRM, coming in at 65%. About 22% of you are on Salesforce.com, with 11% on others, and 5% of the current attendees not using any CRM solution currently.
Okay, great. So that's not surprising. About 80% plus of people are on the two top ones there, Salesforce and Dynamics. They are the most popular. They're not the only games in town. And one of the things we found, by the way, which we really won't get into in depth today, is the software you're using really doesn't have a lot to do with success or failure. So although those two are the most popular, that's not intended to communicate that you can't be successful if you've gone with something else. Those just happen to be the two best-selling solutions on the market today. So, okay, thanks again for that. And again, please participate socially. If you're a tweeter at all, use the hashtag C5CRM. It might take a few minute delay, but you'll see the results show up directly there on screen. So let's jump into our content. First of all, our agenda for today is pretty simple. We're going to look at about 12 years of research that's been put into CRM success and failure, and those results are peppered throughout this. We're going to look at both the positive and negative truths about CRM, and we're going to look at what differentiates successful and failed projects. That differentiation is really important. Sometimes there's too much focus on success without sometimes realizing that some of the attributes we focus on success are the same ones that might show up in failure. So understanding what leads to failure and how that's different from success is really important. Before we go any further beyond this slide, I do want you to know you are probably going to hear some things today that you don't want to hear. Mark Twain had said it's easier to fool a person than it is to convince them that they've been fooled, and sometimes some of the things you may see here are things that make you a little bit uncomfortable and don't sit as well with you as you'd like for them to, but our goal here is to be very brutally honest about what leads to success and failure with CRM, even if that's counterintuitive or even in some cases runs against the grain of a lot of the sales and marketing hype that's out there. We're going to use both statistics and stories to back up our content. So if you're considering CRM or wondering why yours isn't working as expected, you're likely going to have some of your core assumptions challenged today. So let's start on a positive note. You've probably heard a lot of this before. A lot's being said and has been said about the value and return on CRM projects. You see some quotes up here. Nucleus Research, they're an objective analyst firm, and what they show this as having possibly the highest return of any technology investment. Gartner, another firm similar to Nucleus, has identified that recently CEOs have latched onto CRM as the #1 technology investment that they tend to be focusing on for the first time ever, replacing some of the more conventional technology assessments like ERP systems and core infrastructure. Our own research shows that the return on a CRM investment really runs between about $1.50 and $6.81 for every dollar spent. So Nucleus had kind of said maybe an average of $5.60 for every dollar spent. We've actually done a number of roadmaps and case studies where we came up with a range of $1.50 to $6.81. Now, not every CRM project produces a return. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. And asking the implementers, you can see some successful companies are spending even more, while unsuccessful ones are cutting costs. So one of the interesting truths about CRM is if you have a successful CRM project, those who are successful and tend to stay successful don't view it as an item that they purchase and invest in once. It's more of an ongoing investment. It's a living, breathing part of their organization that's transforming who they are. But there's plenty of marketing out there about CRM success today, so we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about that. What we're going to talk more about is CRM failure because, frankly, very little is being said about that. So this is a B17 Flying Fortress. It's 103 feet long and it's 25 tons of angry steel. What on earth can CRM learn from a World War II B-17 bomber? Well, as you may know, these bombers were very critical to the ultimate success, victory of the Allies during the Second World War. What you may not know is they faced a lot of problems in establishing that reputation. They were losing these bombers rapidly during some of the earlier stages of the war. What they knew was it needed more armor in key places, but they couldn't just put it across the bottom of the plane. It would create too much weight, it would be too heavy, and either it couldn't lift off at all, or it would be so slow and bulky, either it wouldn't have enough fuel to return, or it would be such a slow target that it would be worse than it was. So they engaged their military analysts, and what they did was they said, let's look at where the most holes are, and that's where we're going to reinforce the armor. So they looked at the planes that came back, they patched up the places where the most holes were, and on new planes going out, they put extra armor in those areas as well. Off went the bombers, and it made no difference at all. Same number of bombers were getting shot down. That failure rate was costing lives and could have potentially cost the war. Along came Abraham Wald, a Jewish mathematician and also refugee from Hungary. One of the things he noted was they were measuring the wrong thing. What they were actually measuring was success. They were looking at the bombers that were coming back successfully and looking where the holes were. Now, ideally, they would have looked at the ones that were getting shot down and reinforced where they were being hit. They didn't have that luxury, so instead they just said, let's reinforce the places where the bullet holes are not showing up and see if that has an impact. And indeed it did. More planes came back. They were able to sustain the inventory of planes for a much longer period of time. So the point here, and what we can all learn from it, is understanding our failures can be more important than understanding our successes. So it's easy to spend a lot of time looking at CRM, maybe that other organizations are doing, or listening to case studies of vendors, and get very excited about the potential of CRM. But until we understand these failures, and there are a lot of them to learn from, we're going to run a higher risk of having more failures in the marketplace. So that's why we are where we are today, talking about CRM success and failure. So here's some of the truth about CRM failure. Like our World War II bombers, we haven't been learning the right lessons from CRM failure. Rates have been high and have been sustained high for over 10 years now. And those rates don't even include the multiple failures that about 50% of businesses experience. If you look at the pie chart on this page, about half of the individual surveys were on their second or third implementation. So there's some question that some have had in past presentations of this sort of, well, how do you really measure CRM failure? Is it really a failure, or is there some gray area? So the way we looked at this, a couple of ways. Most people would agree that a failure to produce a return on investment would indicate failure. Well, if you look from the third from the bottom statistic there, in 2012, Nucleus Research did some research where they were actually trying to do a study on the ROI of CRM. So they interviewed many different companies and put some numbers together, and that white paper is downloadable. If you do a search on the web of Nucleus CRM ROI, you'll probably find the white paper. And if you look at that white paper and a very small footnote on one of the pages, you'll see it saying, oh, and by the way, of the companies that participated in this research showing a positive return, 30% of them actually had no return at all. They lost money on their CRM implementation. So in my view, that's sort of the definition of, if you're not producing any kind of return on investment from your CRM investment, why did you do it at all? By that definition, that's a failure. So I would look at that as a low watermark. At least 30% of companies are failing. If you look at adoption rates, satisfaction rates, or some of those other more subjective measures, then the failure rate starts to jump up to more like 50, 60, even 70% in many cases. If you interview some of the people who've been through a few CRM implementations, as we did as part of this research, to a person, they all said a 30 to 60% failure rate does not surprise me at all. Given what we've learned from this, it really is a tough thing to implement well. So there's a lot of failure out here, and it's been going on for a long time. The answers are a little bit elusive. One of the assumptions we had as we went into doing this piece of research is what we called the second timers. We have for many years said we'd like to target people who are implementing CRM for the second time or more, because presumably they've learned a lot of the lessons. They're going to be open to doing things right, and they're more likely to do the right things to be successful. And so a lot of our marketing actually targeted those folks. We expected when we did our research that you would find that people who had failed the first time or had low satisfaction the first time would have much better satisfaction rates the second time and even higher on the third time. But the research showed almost the opposite, that just as people implemented multiple times, they were still unsatisfied. They were still failing at almost the same rate that they were failing before. In other words, like our B17 bombers, they were probably learning some lessons, but they were learning the wrong lessons. They were putting armor over the bullet holes instead of putting armor in the right places to get it right. So that's what we want to focus on today, is what are the right places to put the extra armor on. All of the things on the left are true. It didn't work the first time, they tried new software. It didn't work the first time, get more people from the business side involved. It didn't work the first time, invest more or maybe less in configuration or maybe in different outside partners. Recently someone said, this time what we're going to do differently is send our IT team into the field to work directly with our sales, service, and marketing people. Same kind of thing. Focusing on potentially the wrong things. All of the things on the right are still happening in spite of trying all these things on the left. Fizzles out like New Year's resolutions is something we heard that's a great quote. Another rock, we're adding to the load of our people and not lightening the load by putting CRM in there. It's overly complex. People are spending more time doing, less time doing valuable things because they're spending more time doing administrative things with their CRM system. Now, none of these things are necessarily bad things that shouldn't be attempted or done, but none of them are moving the needle much on our failure rates. So let's take a little bit deeper of a dive here. Before explaining the fix, it's important that we get a little bit of context into exactly what is CRM. If you ask 3 different people, you'll get 3 different definitions. Why is it important? Why is CRM suddenly one of the top things on the on the CEO's list of things that need to get done in the relatively near future? And then we can answer, so why are we doing it wrong so often? So first of all, as a quick definition for CRM, it's really all about 4 things. It's about listening, understanding, connecting, and knowing. So what does that mean? The basics of any life-on-life human relationship really comes down to these 4 things. Listening is this idea of listening to other people, asking questions, listening to them, and remembering what they tell you. When you think about how you scale that to a business, listening is something you do across the organization. You listen to customers by way of their transactions. You listen to customers by way of conversations you're having in sales. You listen to service inquiries. You listen to web analytics. The list goes on, and you remember those things. You have a place to put all of that information. Understanding means taking a look at all that information, analyzing it, and also distributing it so people can make better decisions with it. Some of that means looking at a macro level and making big decisions about the operations of the whole company. Some of it is a very micro one-on-one level where you have somebody interacting with a customer. They can see the vital information about that customer in real time. They can understand it, and they can respond to it so that customer doesn't have to answer the same question multiple different times, and they can be delighted with good experiences. Once you have a foundation of listening and understanding, then you can connect with somebody in a relevant and personal way. And the last step, knowing, that's the continuous improvement step. That's this idea of constantly looking and saying, how can I do this better? What did I learn this time around? This is a step that is most often overlooked, and we could probably spend an entire session talking about how to get the right analytics and even meeting structure out there to really make sure everybody gets to participate in this process of learning and changing the behavior of the company, transforming who you are as a company to pay more attention to the customer. So if we summarize those 4 things in one easy acronym, the idea is the luck principle. The basics of CRM are really just doing 4 simple things, doing a better job of listening to our customers, understanding them across the company, connecting with them in more personal and relevant ways, and knowing what your results are so you can continuously improve. So a lot of people get away from that and get very overly complicated, trying to do a lot of other things with CRM, and there can be room for adding to it over time, but when you do that too early on, you make it a little bit too complex and you kind of trip over yourself. So how did we get into this fix? Well, most companies start with, of course, some good people in the company. They have some great products, some great ideas they've started to offer, and of course they have a few customers. Maybe they add some distributors, depending on their industry, to help them get the word out and to help them get their products into the hands of customers. And they grow, they add more customers, and of course they add some systems to help them do a better job of managing them. To work with all that, they have to collaborate. That can be challenging. They're working within their team, they're working directly with distributors, they have some direct relationships with customers, they're starting to learn different systems. So that might be a little bit challenging, but for a small and growing business, they tend to kind of conceptually already embrace this idea of luck. They might not know that acronym, but they already intuitively know that they need to listen to, understand, connect, and know each other and their customers, so they manage. It's not too big, it's not too out of control, and they can get by. But then something happens. They start to experience some success. Success brings growth. They might grow by acquisition, they might grow organically, they might spread their office across multiple locations. They may even add innovations like new products, services, or apps, and more these days, many of those innovations like customer portals and other things are increasingly internet-connected devices. If you've heard of the IoT, the Internet of Things, More and more often, these things that we use to serve our customers and be innovators are actually things that generate data and connect with our customers and back-end systems. They may add some influencers to help sell. They may increase their distributors. And of course, all of that means they're going to expand on the number and type of customers that they serve. And of course, they've added new systems to assist with that. So now, as we start to look at the complexity of collaborating and working together and working with customers, it's gotten more complex. There's different processes by office or even by person. It's increasingly difficult to share information between different people and offices. A lot of people have to learn a lot of systems to get their job done, and that can actually be a double-edged sword. We've run into places where, for instance, inside sales has become really proficient at using multiple different systems, and field sales, needing to stay in front of the customer more often, has given up on it completely, and if they need any help with any systems, they push it back to inside sales, who is already overburdened, and now they need to actually not only do their job, but do some of the job of the field sales people to make that happen. So it's very common inside sales becomes admins for field sales if they're not careful. And that is really deadly in today's world because inside sales, as you may know, is increasingly playing the key role in driving more business. So what do companies do with this situation? I'm sorry, and so then questions that were once simple now require heroic effort. Is a customer satisfied? Have they logged any issues with us? And if so, how many and how long ago? What's our active pipeline? Here's a question that a lot of companies can't answer. Is someone still a customer? It's amazing how many clients and prospects we sit down with and say, what's your definition of a customer and how do you know if you've lost one? And you often get blank stares with that. Nobody has a practical definition. They know if they lost money or made money, but they're not really sure if they've lost a customer yet or not. That leads to a lot of frustration with customers and distributors. Employees feeling helpless tend to disengage. And so management, often seeing this problem, maybe not quite from that perspective, says, let's make an investment to try to solve this. And they buy a CRM system. And the quotes you start to hear are, well, this is just another system to learn. It hasn't taken anything away that I already have to do, but it has added something else to my load. One client put it very succinctly when they said, look, our last CRM project felt like we were already marching up a steep hill with a heavy pack on our backs, and management threw a rock in the backpack and said, here, this should help, without taking anything else out. This approach also, by the way, is impossible to scale. If you want to add more capacity to serve more customers, your CRM investment is not becoming something that enables you to grow. You're still going to have to add about the same proportion of sales and service and marketing and other people to serve customers as you grow your customer base. And you want something that will scale. So the vision for all of this is something like what you see right now. It's a single system that can be used by all customer-facing employees as their primary and, in the best case, exclusive system for customer information. Now, this is conceptual. It does not mean all the other systems go away. There'll be a need for most, if not all, of those existing systems. It does sometimes replace a few. It also doesn't mean that it replaces direct collaboration with customers and each other. It may reduce some of it, but the idea is you have one repository for all the information, one place where you can remember everything, but you're still interacting face-to-face and at a human level just as much as you were before, but you may now be able to integrate some other channels that are much more efficient, like social and email, integrate inside sales, outside sales, and marketing, and those kinds of things. So in other words, we've created a problem by applying a lot of technology to our increasingly complex organizations. That's okay, that all of that technology and complexity are an important part of being able to grow up to and beyond a certain size, but then we try to solve the problem by throwing more technology and complexity at our teams. That approach that worked for solving other problems is not going to solve our problems with customer relationships. And one of the key reasons for failure, people believe their CRM failure is a technology problem, so they throw new technology at it. Now, the technology piece may be an important and necessary step, but expecting new software to solve the CRM problem is almost certainly going to lead to failure. So after a lot of years and a lot of both internal review and research, we've found 4 key things that if they're lacking, they almost always lead to failure. Now, these are part of a longer couple of lists that we call the 7 deadly sins and the 7 habits for success. We don't have time to go through all of that today, but we're focusing on these 4 items because, number one, they're fairly counterintuitive. Of all the ones you've seen there, many of them you could guess at if you've been around relationship management types of projects before. These 4 are somewhat counterintuitive. We see a lot of people missing them. And number 2, we view these 4 as almost immutable. If you have a CRM project that has been highly successful while missing one of these 4, that really is the definition of luck, not the acronym luck, but you got lucky. Things happen to fall into place all on their own. These are really, really critical and something a lot of companies just don't take the time or effort to invest in. So that's worth saying again, because many will tell you that these 4 things are optional or not even helpful, especially if they're trying to sell you CRM licenses or just sell you the software. Skimp on any of these 4 steps, and the chances are increasingly high that you will fail. You're not putting the armor in the right places on your airplane. So number 1, planning to fail is, failing to plan is planning to fail. So the first and most important area that differentiates those who succeed from those who fail is a clear vision, a plan. This isn't necessarily a detailed set of requirements. It's more an understanding of where is the ship going that you're on. Most organizations have very little idea of where they're really trying to go. It's like they set off on a journey thinking CRM will be an autopilot and take them to this unknown destination, this promised land, only to find that they're lost in a wilderness and they don't have a Sherpa. They don't have a guide who's been there and done that to get them where they need to go. There's another extreme possibility here too. There are those who start with very little vision and planning, but there are others who use more conventional requirements gathering approach. It's planning of sorts, but it's way too granular for a CRM project. A CRM project needs to remain flexible and agile and move around a little bit as you go, because there will be new things you learn about yourself and your customers and the technology you need to make those relationships work that you're not going to be able to fully anticipate on the front end of the project. A roadmap lays out a high-level vision, usually about a 2 to 5 year vision, for where you're going and a set of expected steps to get there. Then it leaves the flexibility to change course during and after each major phase. Remember the earlier comment about another rock in the backpack? CRM without integration is just throwing another rock into the backpack of users. Now, when you hear integration, we see it, we've experienced it as 3 different things. Number 1 is bringing data from other systems into CRM so you can go one place to see everything, require fewer systems for your key core customer-facing people to use to get their jobs done. Number 2, pushing data from CRM into other things to avoid double data entry. So you don't have to re-enter orders, you don't have to re-enter names and addresses, those kinds of things. You enter those once. There might be a governance process in place to make sure bad data doesn't get pushed, but you don't have to rekey everything in again. And number 3, and the one that companies most often miss, is it also means migrating processes from other systems into CRM where they belong. So there's a lot of great information about this out there, but one case in point is quote management. Oftentimes companies either have a completely separate quoting tool or they might have quoting built into their ERP solution. Quoting is a core sales exercise. And if it's not in CRM, what you're by definition saying is you go one place to track information about customers, you go another place to generate a quote, and somehow you have to do some manual machination work to get that quote into CRM. A little more of a gray area might even be things like order entry, customer service entries, help desk, those kinds of things. All of those are customer-facing activities, and many companies have a sacred cow in their legacy system that they don't want to move away from because they made an investment in the past. But they're hobbling themselves by doing that. And the data supports this. The number 1 obstacle, when we asked in our research, what's the number 1 obstacle to getting your CRM solution adopted? 35% of people, more than any other answer, said integration with our other systems, with other software. Interestingly enough, as a separate question, we asked people how many systems do they have to use to get their jobs done. And you can see if they only have to use CRM or CRM plus one other system, then by and large they're happy with their CRM system. But the moment you add another system, a second or third or fourth system to the mix, satisfaction with CRM starts to drop off pretty significantly overall. So the data kind of bears out that number 1 issue. And then a more subjective comment from one participant. They'd said that they actually spent millions of dollars over 7 years, and the turning point for them in getting adoption and really driving value was when they finally migrated their CRM users entirely off of ERP and just gave them one system to get their jobs done. Our next area is this idea of an ongoing focus on CRM. So you may recall we'd mentioned this earlier, but companies that are experiencing success with CRM and it's a lasting success are companies that continue to invest in it. If you look at the chart on the top, that kind of plays out the more satisfaction usually means more investment, and on the bottom it spells out exactly what they're doing that they're investing in. So if you look at the 4 criteria over there on the left, you'll see those spell out something that is probably familiar to you now: luck. They're applying luck internally just like they're applying it to their customers. So they're actually saying, how do we work within our team to listen to them, understand what it is that they need, gather their feedback, understand that, turn it into something, some change, and connect with them so that you're actually giving them the new things, the new tools, the new functionality that they need to get their jobs done better. And then how do we track that on the back end to make sure that we've done it right? Again, an easy way to think about that is, hey, we want to apply luck to our customers, but also, are we applying luck to our own team? So, talk about luck one more time as the 4th of our 4 immutable laws. Remember our description of CRM. It's easy to get carried away with all the bells and whistles, and those who have been really successful eventually get to that. There are a lot of great things you can do with CRM besides the basics, but those who go too far, too fast with that tend to make their systems overly complex. So focus on improving the 4 areas of how you engage with customers and with each other first. If you're getting started or if you're experiencing failure, strip away a lot of the extra stuff that you're trying to do and get back to how are we improving these 4 areas in incremental ways. And it's an unending process. You're not going to do all 4 perfectly because you set up CRM. You'll do all 4 a little bit better in the first pass. And as you continue to invest over time and listen to your people, you'll do each of them better and better. But remember to balance simplicity and functionality. You can err to either extreme. You can make things so simple that it's not useful, and you can make things so functional or have so many fields on a page that it's overwhelming and people kind of tune out. So let's recap real quick. What lessons have we learned so far? So it's pretty clear CRM projects have great potential, both in terms of financial return and actual value to the users, but also in terms of creating more innovation and engagement with your workforce. And that's more likely to keep customers satisfied and even keep your employees satisfied and happy and loyal. It's also pretty clear that CRM fails a lot. And that has not really been improving in spite of some great advances in the underlying technology. There's some awesome software out there right now that's worlds different than it was 10 or 15 years ago when these metrics started being captured, but it's had almost no impact on success and failure. The technology, the underlying technology causes have mostly been resolved, but the process and people issues that are unique to every company, those are the lingering ones that are causing more failure. And we don't seem to be learning the right lessons. Nearly half of companies have already tried 2 or more times, and they're still working away at it. We tend to easily gravitate towards patching the wrong parts of our bombers. The place that I would say most heavily weighted for this is thinking that the technology is the solution. Many, many times we've been called into companies who've said, our CRM isn't working, we need somebody to come help us do some CPR on it. We go in and spend some time with them analyzing the situation, and they say, we really think we need to throw out the old CRM software and get something new. Now, if it's really old and dated, legacy software, that might be the case, but more often than not these days what we're finding is people are switching from one CRM solution that could be perfectly effective to another one that could still be perfectly effective, expecting the new technology to solve the problem. And when that's the expectation, it almost always results in failure. The technology does not solve the problems. It's your planning and processes and people and ongoing commitment that solve the problems. So successful projects combine those four immutable rules. Develop a clear 3 to 5 year plan so you know where you're going and what you're expecting. You won't wind up in the middle of the ocean lost at sea. Expect to integrate, build that into your plan, including migrating functionality out of other systems. Expect to remain focused on CRM like you would remain focused on a personal fitness program. That will transform your organization. Great quote from a client was, I've been involved in 3 CRM programs before this one. They all felt like New Year's resolutions. It was exciting at the beginning, but then they fizzled out. There are so many people we talk to who tell us, I know the right thing to do is to use the CRM system. I know I should be in there every day, entering my opportunities, tracking my activities, getting my contacts updated, but I just can't quite push myself to do it. There's always something else that seems a little more urgent that I need to jump into. That sounds a lot like a New Year's resolution. That sounds a lot to me like my commitment to be involved in a fitness program. If you don't have someone to push you and keep coaching you on that, you're likely to fall off the wagon. And then don't forget the basics. LUCK. Don't forget the basics of why are you doing this? What is it that you're trying to accomplish? Make sure you don't lose focus on those even as you do grow and become more complex with what you're doing. There are a lot more things that could be added to this list, but this is a starting point check boxes. If you look at what you're either planning to do or what you've already got in place and you don't have these 4 bases well covered, you need to really stop. Take stock of where you are, evaluate, and make sure you get these items added to your list. So what are the next steps from here? What do we do with all of this information that we've shared with you guys today? So several action items. First of all, this presentation is based on a much larger set of study results that we completed about 6 or 12 months ago. So there's a great deal of research out there available to you. You can download that. There's a link right there you can go to. I would point out, by the way, on these links, they are case sensitive. So make sure you get the casing right on these. I believe at the end of the presentation or shortly after the end of it, we'll share a tweet with those in it as well. But go help yourself to that. You can request the download anytime you'd like to, and that will give you a lot more depth of research into why CRM fails and some of the things you can do about it. You can also request an executive briefing. So if you want to reach out to us and have our executive team engage with your executive team for a 90-minute briefing, there's a link there where you can learn a little bit more about those briefings and request one for your own executive team. The last thing I'd suggest to you is that you consider professional help. Just like Sherpas help their clients overcome challenges, C5 Insight works with our clients to develop great plans, select great CRM solutions, integrate systems, and create a disciplined, ongoing approach and follow through. Now, someone look at that and say, well, maybe you're just trying to sell me something, and I would respond to that, you're absolutely right. We've spent years trying to find and fine-tune what the right thing is to sell so that we can be a part of lasting success for our clients, just like Sherpas have. Or put differently, even professional athletes have a coach to help them stay disciplined. Even though you may have a great IT team, even though you may have experienced business leaders, some of whom may have actually already participated in successful CRM projects, having the right coach alongside of you to help you stay disciplined and get the right plan in place is critical to success if you want to be highly successful. So one closing announcement here, and as some of you may start asking some questions, which we'll stop and take the time to answer, Allison and I will interact on that a bit. We do have a second webcast coming up here soon on nurture marketing. As most of you are probably aware, there tends to be a gap between sales and marketing functions in most organizations, and this kind of takes a direct look at that gap and how nurture marketing can be used to help close that gap some. So we'd invite you guys to sign up for that. The link is right there at the bottom of the page. It's just a couple of days off.
Yeah, it's taking place next Tuesday, the 12th, from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Terrific. So please submit your questions to Allison if you haven't already done that. We're going to pause and take those in a minute here. For those of you who might be checking out, please, you'll get an opportunity to give us some feedback. Please, we take that very, very seriously. That's part of the luck process for us. That's our opportunity to know whether this content has served you well and is something you'll be able to apply. So it'll only take a minute or two. We've tried to keep it very brief, but we do beg of you to please take those couple of minutes to tell us how we did, how we can do this better, what else you'd like to learn when we do this again. We will be doing variations of this probably on a monthly basis, so tune in or invite your executives to it if they haven't come yet. With that said, Allison, do we have any questions?
We don't currently have any questions, but feel free to go ahead and use that feed. Somebody did ask if they can get a copy of the presentation, and we'll be sure to share the recording with you if that is something that you would like. You can reach out to us at luck@c5insight.com if you have any immediate questions you'd like to address one-on-one. We'd love to hear from you, or go ahead and take a moment to share a question right now with the whole group. And as you close out of this webinar, you will get an automatic screen pop up that will show you, I think it's a 3 or 4 question survey, so hopefully just a couple moments of your time to give us some great feedback, as Jeff already mentioned.
Thank you all very much. You've been good to come in and spend 45 minutes of your time with us. We're giving you a little bit of the hour back, so enjoy that, but also use a couple of minutes of that hour to let us know how we did. And Allison and I will sit here quietly for a couple of minutes just to see if any other questions come in, and if not, we will say goodbye in just a few minutes. Okay, so one question just came in, which is how do the various CRM tools compare? Very good question, and we actually looked at that within the research that we did. What our research showed was the tool you use has a relatively small impact on success or failure. The couple of things that we have observed are homegrown tools tend to fail more often than the off-the-shelf ones, as you might imagine. When you buy something off the shelf, you're probably buying millions and millions of dollars of research and development that went into it. It's very hard to repeat all of that in a homegrown tool. Very old legacy tools tend to not perform as well in terms of success as the more recent modern tools. So if you have something that's really far out of date and doesn't use the latest technology and those kinds of things, that can be an issue. Another one that's a little less conclusive is it appears that on-premise succeeds a little less frequently than cloud. And I hesitate to say that partly because there's a lot of marketing hype around cloud succeeding more often than on-premise. But as we looked at that and peeled back the layers a little bit, we think that actually is more of a technology issue than anything. Cloud solutions don't require as much special infrastructure configuration and setup as on-premise solutions do. So, and the variance was relatively minor there, but it was noticeable. So if you're a large organization with a lot of IT resources and you can really focus on your own infrastructure and servers and those kinds of things, then the difference between success and failure there is probably going to be negligible. If you're a mid to small organization and don't want to have to constantly be upgrading servers and doing manual processes or paying outside vendors to do your software upgrades for you, you're probably going to be more likely to succeed with a cloud-based solution if you can get by with that. Now, from solution to solution, the two main ones that we've looked at, there wasn't enough statistical significance to say one way or another, and the other ones, there was so little statistical significance with who participated in our survey that it would be really impossible to say solution A versus solution B outpolls one. There's certainly some, if you looked at a single response, you could draw a conclusion, but we don't want to draw conclusions just based on what 1 or 2 people have told us. Great question. Thank you for asking. Anything else, Allison?
No other new questions have come in, but feel free to use that chat box if you'd like to ask the question at this point.
Okay, well, we're going to call it a wrap then. Tweet us other questions if you have them. We're going to kind of continue our tweets up until about the top of the hour here, so keep that Twitter account open, and there's a little bit of bonus content and some pictures and stuff like that. If you like some of the charts and graphs and quotes, you'll see some of those things coming through in your Twitter feed, as well as some links to downloadable resources and future events. And Allison is raising her hand telling me there's one more question.
There's one more question asking about best practices to have a successful migration from one CRM to the other.
Okay, a very good question, a very big question. First of all, I would say that one of the things to be careful about keeping in mind is the planning step that we talked about. Presumably, you're migrating from one to the other because there's some dissatisfaction with the earlier one. So you're going to want a good vision and roadmap for where you're going. Another thing we found with migrating from one solution to another is, as bad as you might think an existing solution is, there are people in your organization who have probably learned how to use it and use it well, or at least certain features of it well. And no matter what you do with the new CRM solution, there are some things it's not going to do as well as the old one. So be careful to set expectations really, really well with people, and be careful to really understand what are the mission critical things people can do now that they can't lose, and invest the extra time in configuring your new solution to, I wouldn't necessarily say replicate how it was done before. You don't want to pave the cow paths, if you're familiar with that expression, but at least to make people as efficient in getting from point A to point B as they did before. And then there's the whole idea of the data migration piece, which is a very technical endeavor and really important. We've seen people successfully go from one extreme or another with that, meaning some have said part of our failure is the data is so bad, we're not migrating any data into the new CRM solution. People are starting from scratch on it. That can be kind of horrifying sounding, but if there's so much bad data in there, it might make sense to go ahead and let it go, keep the old one alive for legacy purposes, and require that people enter it. On the other hand, we've seen people get very detailed with the data in here is by and large really, really good. Maybe we can filter out a little bit of the bad data in the process, but we need a good migration strategy to make sure we don't lose any documents or contacts or any vital history for customers that was in that legacy system. So make sure your data migration process is good and clean.
Another great question coming in: how do we in IT enforce adoption of CRM across the organization?
Great question. Enforcing adoption. So the first challenge I would give you on that is be careful about enforcing adoption. It's ultimately what you want. Adoption is a sign that things are working well. But we worked with one client recently who had great adoption rates, and when we went and talked to some users and looked at performance level, we came back to their management team and showed them our findings that actually, although they had adopted it, it actually was making them less efficient at their job. And what management realized at that point in their own words was, wow, you know what, we actually have really good soldiers in this company. If we ask them to do something, they will do it without question and without raising much of a fuss about it. And that's exactly what happened here. And unfortunately, adoption was the wrong thing in their case. So the main thing you want to look hard at is, how do we drive as much value as we can? So make sure you're really focusing on that and that people understand that you're focusing on that. And then, yes, you do need the right incentives, and it's usually a combination of a carrot and a stick to get people to adopt. CRM is not a build it and they will come tool. It is more of a build it and get them to use it long enough to realize the benefit of it, and then it becomes a little less effort. So for someone in IT asking that question, what I would say is, you need a really close relationship with the business side to make that happen, particularly the leadership of business side, but leadership can also be those people in the front lines who are regarded as leaders, people to look up to. You also need an ongoing cadence. So no matter how good you make the technology, and no matter how much you measure adoption and try to use the stick, cadence of meetings, it includes management, and using CRM to run those meetings, using CRM to run your business. That's really what it takes. We've developed a whole process called Lux Score that's specifically around doing that, so you can get everybody involved in transforming how they get their jobs done by adopting CRM, transforming how management makes decisions by adopting CRM for meetings and everything else in between. So long-winded answer to that question. There's a lot to it. But as I said, the ongoing is an important part of CRM success. If you're struggling with adoption, it might be that it's been regarded as a project that's kind of been done and now people should just adopt it. But CRM's never really done. You have a lot of internal work to do. I hope that helped a bit. Great question. And we have one more.
And it looks like we've got another one. Many organizations are using CRM along with a separate CPQ system for quoting, pricing, etc. How do we ensure seamless user experience across tools?
Great question. So it goes back to the integration question. So CPQ, so I assume that means a quoting type of package.
Configure, price, quote.
Okay. So a lot of CRM systems out there have third-party configurator and quotation tools that you can purchase and have automatically integrated with your CRM solution. So you may want to check those out. That's certainly our first and biggest recommendation on that. If you don't have something, or yours is so unique to your organization or industry that you can't go with a third-party one, I would highly recommend you look at integration. What you want your salespeople, inside sales, outside sales, if necessary customer service, to experience is a sense of using a single system to get their jobs done. So you need to push very, very hard on how do we get these two systems to share data with each other so that we're not double entering anything, so we've got accurate data in CRM, and even so that the users of CRM can feel like they're not leaving CRM to get their quoting done. That's the goal you should go for. If you can't get to that, as close as you can get to it is certainly the best possible option.
And I don't see any other questions in the queue at this time.
All right. Well, thank you again, everybody, for coming. Recording will be available. We'll reach out to everybody who signed up with an email once that recording is available. Watch the Twitter feed there for a little bit more information. Thank you for all the great questions you asked, and good luck. Call us if there's anything we can do for you, but good luck with your CRM initiatives. Thanks again. Bye-bye.